welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris. I hope you're doing well. We are doing our astrology of the week ahead. It's pretty dark out. It's kind of late here, but I wanted to do this for you so that I could get it out for you on the Monday like we do. And we are talking about October 27th through November 2nd. So we enter November this week. This is going to take us to next Sunday, and then next week we'll have our full moon that we'll be working with. But for here, we are working with our water energy. We are in a very watery time. The end of October into November sees us in a Grand Water Trine with Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn in Pisces, but we also have Neptune in Pisces. And the combination of this week, Mars comes in and completes the Grand Trine in Scorpio, but we also have Mercury there for part of this week. And we've been working with Mercury and Mars in Scorpio. They were conjunct in our new moon. And this is a lot of water energy. And there's also some other things going on this week that I want to weave a little narrative with to hopefully support you as we move through the close of October into November. 2025 is coming to a close, and I did put another video out that's really about the final kind of journey through these months, which has to do with water energy because it has a lot to do with Saturn and Neptune, and those are themes I'll probably keep kind of bringing us into because they are big. And so let's talk about this week. So as we start on the 27th, we are in that Grand Water Trine, but it's new compared to last week, because last week we were moving with Mercury, really talking to Jupiter and Saturn, and now it's Mars. Okay, and it is exact, Mars is exact in its trine with Jupiter as we open this week. So this does shift the energy a little bit. It makes it a little bit more intense because Mars in Scorpio really wants there to be this active yin drive, allowing our depths to come up and to be that which we're witnessing and that which we are moving forward with. That said, I put forward in quotations because it's water energy, and water energy doesn't work with time in the way that, say, earth energy works with time. When we're in water, and especially when we've got a very, very slowly moving Jupiter in Cancer, it is past becoming present, showing us the future, weaving back in the past. And so part of the beauty of water time in this trine is that, especially with the Saturn who's retrograde at 26, heading back to 25 degrees of Pisces, as we're in this week's water trine, there is such opening for healing. But that said, it's deep. Mars in Scorpio feels intensely, bonds intensely. Also, stuff could be coming up. Chiron is also in a square to that Jupiter, and as we approach the end of the week, Venus is going to be opposite that Chiron. For folks that are newer to my channel, this is Charlotte. She likes to say hi a lot. Folks are getting to know Charlotte's tale very well. And so especially because Chiron is in that square with Jupiter, which is ongoing, this is deep layers of healing. And so especially as Mars comes into play, you know, on the one hand, if we have got creative projects, if we are kind of working, whether it's art or writing or whatever your creativity is bringing you into right now, this water energy is lovely for that. It helps us get into a flow, especially if it's going into the depths of your own psyche. That's a really lovely way to work with this Mars. Also, if you just want to do some journaling, or you do want to kind of put your own experiences transformed into artwork or creativity, this water trine is lovely for that. If you have a project on the go, or you put something on the shelf, you get inspired to kind of pull that down and work on it. That's a lovely way of working with this Mars. It's also going to bring that creative juice into the healing and transform with that Chiron. And yet that Mars in Scorpio can absolutely also get triggered. And when we're getting triggered, it's most likely, yes, from whatever's going on in the present, but it's also much deeper than that. The energy of right now is waves pulling things up from our own depths, bringing it up. And that can be overwhelming, right? I said in one of my daily posts, I think the last line was something like, and when in doubt, wear your floaties. And someone commented and said that you really hated wearing the floaties as a child, but now are kind of like, I'll take those floaties. Same exact with me. I hated wearing those floaties. I was like, no, I could swim in the deep end. And now in this like emotional cosmic water, floaties, a-okay, right? And whatever your floaties happen to be, maybe it is a little Netflix situation, maybe it's a treat, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a cat sitting on your lap purring like I have right now, right? Really leaning into those supports, especially because Jupiter is in play. Jupiter's moving so slowly in this water trine, and it wants to bring us into what's nurturing. It wants to help us come home to ourselves. But it could also be wavy because there's just so much water energy, okay? And also paying attention to emotions. This is not a time to push emotions down. This is not a week. 2025 into 2026 is not a season to push emotions down. It is a season to allow them, to witness them, to move with them, to turn to those creative projects that help us channel and transform, because we are in a watery season here, okay? And especially when our sun is in Scorpio. And as we move through the week, remember, Neptune is back at 29 degrees of Pisces. So Neptune is now adding the archetype of everything that is beyond the day-to-day into the mix. And Mercury, who's ahead of Mars, is going to come into its exact trine with that Neptune on the 30th before it moves into Sagittarius. So as we move through this week, right, it is really actually lovely, lovely energy for any of those creative projects that you might have, especially if they are somehow merging your own personal journey with creativity, with spirituality. It's a time to do that journaling. It's a time to do any of those deep dives, whether that is your own writing, a book you've had on the shelf that just calls to you, YouTube video that the algorithm pops up, you know, anything around healing, especially spiritual and reclaiming, healing trauma, but through spirituality and reclaiming, letting go of old stories. That is all here. Okay. As Mercury comes into that opposition with Neptune, there's several layers of that. So in terms of the self-inquiry healing work, there's a lot there, but you also absolutely don't want to dig. This is not about digging. This is not about saying, I'm going to do every single aspect of shadow work there is and make a list and da-da-da-da. This is not that type of energy. It's not moving with the cognitive mind. This is something emerges in the moment and we watch it, or we see it as a thread and we go journal or make art with it or take it to therapy or a friend or just go for a walk with it. It is about allowing the flow to lead. What emerges, you know, there is also through the remainder of this year and in this water trine, there is also the energy and the archetypes of forgiveness here. And that's part of what that Neptune and Saturn are doing. And especially with all the water energy, it's not something that we need to go after. It's not something that we need to work at. It's more like we're just out because we are working at creating space for ourselves to go into nature, to have the slowdown, to meditate, to just be slow. And in those moments, I am sorry, Charlotte is scratching her claws if you hear that. But that's the drum roll, the drum roll. In those moments, that is when what I call phenomenological forgiveness can just emerge. And it's like, it's just a wave, and we witness it, and with it, we release. And maybe there's a story attached to that. Maybe there's not. You know, and if you do want to practice, it's just sitting and imagining waves of forgiveness from Goddess, literally the ocean just washing over us, you know, of unconditional love, because Neptune brings all of that. And as we move through the 30th, Mercury is opposite that Neptune, meaning that there are messages coming through. And other layers, Neptune is beautiful for forgiveness and such, and spiritual union, and it can also be really disorienting and foggy when we're trying to take Neptune and fit it into a box that it was never meant to be put in. And sometimes those boxes are daily schedules, having to show up at work and think a certain way, you know, and so knowing that there could also be a little bit of brain fog as you're moving through this week. And again, like, pushing through brain fog doesn't usually work all that well, right? So really leaning into the yin energy when and where you can, and just allowing, right? And also maybe not planning certain things. If you already know that your energy is kind of in a yin state, just rolling with that, moving through that. What's here, witnessing what's here, and allowing that to dictate our plans, rather than creating a whole thing with the mind that then we have to cancel or pull back or just be stressed about, because really Neptune just wanted us to sit and journal and look at the fog. Okay, so as we move through that, then we will have November 1st, Mars comes into its exact trine with Neptune. Okay, so that's the movement of this week, is Mars is in its exact trine with Jupiter, and then Saturn, and then Neptune. Mercury has moved ahead. Mercury enters, Charlotte is on everything. Mercury is going to enter Sagittarius on the 30th. And when it does that, it's going to be opposite Uranus and Sedna. So we close the week out with Mercury and Sag, opposite Uranus and Sedna. It is also moving really slowly because it is going to station retrograde at 6 degrees of Sag on November 9th. The day after Uranus is back in Taurus, a few days after our new moon. That's next week. But remembering that this, Mercury's opposite Neptune, coming out of this water trine, and then it comes into fire, Sagittarius, wanting to expand creatively, opposite Uranus and Sedna, a Uranus who's about to go back into Taurus, right? That can absolutely also bring breakthroughs of ideas, but they could go deep because it's coming out of really deep watery places. And then Sedna is there with messages coming through about radical awakening and your journey thus far. But you do want to pay attention to the radical awakening messages about your journey as you move to the end of this week, because at the same time, Mars will be in Scorpio and it will be exactly trine Neptune before it moves into Sagittarius next week. And so again, that energy has many different levels. It is wonderful for supporting just moving with the flow and letting the process lead. If we're trying to be really in control, it's probably not going to work out that well. Spoiler alert. If we're just trying to be in control, whether it's over ourselves or a partner or a friend, relationship, we want to back off, because that is really just asking us to witness what's arising and let universe lead. That's what that Neptune and Pisces is doing. Okay, two other things I want to just call us into is that we also have our Scorpio sun's going to have a little bit of a divine feminine meeting this week. So we have this whole week a sextile between Pallas Athena, who is at 8 degrees of Aquarius, and Juno, who's going to be around 8 degrees of Sagittarius. And then on October 30th through November 1st, the sun will come into that conversation, especially in its square to Athena. Okay, so that Scorpio sun is going to be square Pallas Athena. And so here again, it is about not pushing. Pallas Athena in Aquarius is brilliant. She can see so many directions. She is the ultimate strategizer, but of different timelines and planes. She can connect us to an incredibly visionary intellect. And she's also a little bit fierce in that visionary intellect. And she squares our Scorpio sun, who has a different type of fierceness and wants to deep dive into intimacy, into understanding, into our depths, into penetrating the truth, but through emotion. Scorpio does all of that through emotion. Pallas Athena in Aquarius is doing that through this intellect. And so if you come in, into, and this could play out in relationships, because Scorpio always involves our kind of intimate relationships. It's also just going to play out in our deep moods and what we're journeying with in this massive water trine, right? And so just knowing that there's no competition, there's no butting heads, literally with ourselves or with others. This wants to support by allowing both. By allowing the deeply penetrating gaze to see what's present, and then to let that spur our kind of creative, intellectual visionary. That's not thinking in order to control, but is thinking in order to explore. Okay, and that can bring us into, again, there's a fierceness to that divine feminine energy. And Juno's there in Sag. Juno, who has claimed her water witchy ways from Scorpio, has moved into her fire witchy ways, and she is hopefully getting to have a little bit of fun, expanding, seeing what she wants to commit herself to. And her spirit of fire and expansion and letting yourself be passionate in a joyful way is going to help soothe what could be a little bit of a push and pull in that Scorpio and Aquarius kind of. And again, that can be internal. It can also be relational. And then November 1st to 2nd, as we close the week out, we have Venus in Libra opposite Chiron. And that means that she is also square Jupiter. Okay. And so in their conversation, she also, if you are having a hard time, if you are feeling overwhelmed this week, especially the shift into November with Venus there, do seek out someone to talk with. Do seek out someone who you feel really safe with, that maybe embodies divine feminine energy for you, right? Again, that's not about gender. That's about this person just exudes divine feminine energy. Maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's fill in the blank, but if you are really in it, or you're just even tender, maybe you don't even have the words for the stories and such, but you're just in tender feelings, that Venus is there in Libra talking to that Jupiter. She is bringing support. Okay. You also might just open to a synchronicity, seeing someone on the street that you haven't seen, or you get an email, or you feel like you want to send an email to someone. Follow the pull of the synchronicity. Okay. Also, of course, she brings in divine feminine self-love and self-care. Having that as a relationship with yourself, especially again, if the waves are big, or there's just a lot of emotions, or there's a lot of tenderness, really kind of asking yourself what you need. That's going to go a long way. Okay. Leaning into that relational way of being, it's actually going to help anchor some of that energy. And there's a lot of healing here that's present. Okay. So there we have it. Our week ahead. Next week, we'll be talking about a new moon, and Uranus going back into Taurus, and 2025 is a lot. So I will see you then. Take good care and lots of love. Bye-bye.